It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric is not here today. Eric Harley will return Sunday night, Monday morning. I'm sure we've got quite a bit to talk about. I was just going through X and Trump out there early this morning talking about, I'll read it again. I just read it at the top of the hour, or right before the top of the hour. A New York AG used a statute to go after me that has never been used before, not once. For such a purpose, it in of itself is so unconstitutional and so unfair under this statute. I get no jury. I have no rights. All decisions and rights are given to, in this case, a corrupt, Trump-hating judge who came up with a crazy, out-of-thin-air award in order to damage me politically and not allow me to use any of the large amount of cash I have built up over the years through hard work, insight, instinct, and diligence on my political campaign for president. That is just what crooked Joe Biden wanted, this political hack, coupled with the corrupt and racist attorney general. And then he, goes on to just talk about the Constitution and everything else. And the question that I have, New York law is one thing. It doesn't apply to federal law. When can Trump, and we had said this from the very beginning, when the damage award, came out. And right at that point, we said, this is now an Eighth Amendment issue. An Eighth Amendment issue means fines can't be too high. They can't be out of proportion to the crime that was committed. So and that's why you see one of the reasons at federal courts, you'll see a $100 million lawsuit. People end up getting $5 million. It's like, sorry, the jury way, overdid this particular fine. Excessive fines is part of the Constitution. Cruel and unusual punishment, which can be civil or criminal, also apply there and is in the Eighth Amendment. And so we were screaming from day one, why is nobody talking about this? Where are the conservative legal people not bringing up this as an Eighth Amendment issue? What you heard was, well, Trump can't appeal this until he pays the bond. And our next question was, well, that's that may be state law, and it may be found unconstitutional, but you got to get it to a federal court. Finally, to start out this week, Eric and I were saying, oh, look at this. All of a sudden, conservative legal experts are bringing up the Eighth Amendment. We're like, well, it's about time. I just would expect that the Trump lawyers would be constantly talking about it and before the press saying, we are at a certain point. And I don't know what that point is. I don't know legally what is the point when Trump can file suit about about having to pay the award. If they come after his property, because somebody brought this up the other day, and I know we did the first. This is a property rights issue, too. This is government going after your property. It's his property. And so you look at it and you go, we all know that the amount is insane that the judge put on it. Clearly, it's unconstitutional. I believe the actual fraud law is unconstitutional. But the civil law, the civil fraud law, where there's no victims. And you're talking about property appraisals. And you're talking about, he didn't sign that this is, I signed this under the threat that if, if something is wrong on here, like we're all doing with our taxes right now, that I've committed fraud, I've committed perjury, whatever it is. He didn't do it. From what we know, the disclaimer explanation has never been refuted by anybody. So if he put a disclaimer on saying, look, this is what I think it's worth, do your own due diligence, whatever, there's no fraud there. No fraud at all. And so the award, and let's say a judge found civil fraud. I don't know what the amount is for a fine when there's no victims. How do you figure out a punitive award on something like this? The actual damages are zero. And so this is obviously unconstitutional. It violates the Eighth Amendment, violates excessive fines, violates cruel and unusual punishment from the civil point of view for the amount, because the amount, in essence, destroys Trump's entire business life. And so we know it. When can he go to the federal courts? You're going to find a federal judge that says, this is ridiculous. No, there's a hold on this. Does he have to wait? Is Trump, and this is a question, is Trump, we talk about when you go to the federal courts, that you've got to prove you were damaged in some way. Does he have to wait until she actually officially puts a lock on the Trump Tower, hypothetically, and says nobody can go in? We're going to put this up for auction. Is that when the damage is done? And if not, why hasn't he filed with the federal courts immediately on the Eighth Amendment? These are things I don't understand. And I would think that Trump and his lawyers would want to promote specifically what the legal problem is, what the legalities are and the constitutional issues are here, and then state we are immediately going to federal court. We've been advised that this is the time to do it when it reaches this point, that when she does it at this point, we go to the federal courts, and we know what the federal courts are going to do. They're going to slap her down on this. And I haven't seen any of it. Everything that comes out that I've seen from Trump himself or the Trump lawyers is pretty generic, and I wonder why. And Eric and I have been doing the same thing, trying to research, trying to find anybody out there, say, when can you file? What is that point that you can file? Because take New York law out of it. This is now a federal issue. This is an Eighth Amendment issue. So is there a certain point that he's waiting for? That would be my question here. So I'm not making a statement, and by asking the question, I'm not making a statement. I'm just asking the question. I don't know. And nobody seems to be on this. Nobody seemed to bring up the Eighth Amendment part of it. In fact, when this first came out, it was what you saw almost across the board was, well, it's hopeless for Trump. He can't appeal this. Well, you're not appealing the fraud verdict with the federal. Well, I mean, you may be appealing the fraud verdict with the federal government, but the major thing is at the moment, because a fraud verdict, you might say, has to work its way through the appeals court. The actual Eighth Amendment verdict does not. I would think you can go straight to a federal court on that. And so those would be the questions I would have. Is there a point that kicks off legally the fact that Trump has been damaged, and he's only damaged legally when a lien is put on some of Trump's properties. Trump's properties are closed down. Padlock is put on the door, and at that point, you're losing money. That's your loss. You're being damaged at that point. You can't run your business. Is that what Trump is looking for, or is that what is that the point where Trump will go to federal court? This isn't going to survive in federal court, and so the sooner they take care of it, the better. Which is why I thought they would be promoting it more. And maybe there's a legitimate reason for it. I don't know. But I was just amazed that until this week, Eric and I both, we've been saying this, you've been listening for, since this verdict came out, we went Eighth Amendment violation, Eighth Amendment violation, Eighth Amendment violation. This will be knocked down real quick. Or do they wish to present everything to the courts, to the federal court? Is that what they're waiting for? Are they waiting for the decision from the appeals court? And when the appeals court makes their decision, then they will or will not go to the federal court. Is that the point that they're waiting for. So it's just, there's been no discussion on it, really. There might have been. I haven't heard the discussion, and I've been searching for that discussion on it. All right, coming up, we never got to this week, but there was a New York Times, this is actually earlier in the week, New York Times study that school closures during the pandemic set students back more than a half a year in math. Analysts find, an analysis finds on it. This was actually a New York Times story. Also this week was the anniversary of shutting down everything for 14 days. Remember that? John Stossels did a bunch of different stuff. Sometimes we forget. He was showing video of this guy that was swimming off the California coast alone. And like police boats are pulling him out of the water because he's violating COVID standards. He's out in the ocean alone, swimming. And then they talked about the people that went in their own cars to view a sunset and never got out of their cars that were arrested. When you think of the insanity that happened during COVID, I just hope people remember. But also school closures during the pandemic set students back more than half a year. This is unforgivable because we always knew that young people were not affected by it the same way. We always knew that. There was no reason to close down the schools as they did. And you remember Randy Weingarten and the teachers union. Well, we were to 2022? Almost 2 years after, when they still were hesitant to close school or to open schools up. It was pure insanity. So we'll get to that and more coming up. 866-90 Red Eye.
This morning's USDA Farm Report is brought to you by Howes Products. Tested, trusted, guaranteed since 1920.
Once called the spring flood outlook, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration removed the word flood from its weather outlook for the season. USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey says for spring 2024, that is appropriate in that
we are not expecting any significant spring flooding across the northern plains or the upper Midwest, a big departure from what we normally see in these outlooks.
As a combination of antecedent drought the past 3 years and below average snowfall over the winter is expected to result in no flooding in that region. In other parts of the country,
there are very few areas expecting any moderate flooding and nowhere in the United States expecting major spring river flooding. Those pockets of potential moderate flooding mostly focused across the Mid-South and then in just a few areas in the Southeast.
One minor flood risk area this spring, some watersheds in the Great Basin extending into southeastern Idaho. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This report brought to you by Cenex Fuels and Lubes.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. Elementary students fell behind in math by over half a year, while schools utilize virtual learning services during the COVID-19 pandemic, according to the New York Times analysis. Jeez. Learning loss has been significant. Has been a significant hurdle for schools to overcome in the wake of the pandemic, with many students suffering in subjects such as math, reading, science, according to analysis from the New York Times. One significant factor was online learning implemented by many districts in the United States, resulting in remote students from 3rd to 8th grade falling behind in math by 0.57 years compared to 0.35 years with students who remained in person in the 2020-2021 school year, according to the May 2023 study from Harvard, Stanford, and Johns Hopkins researchers. There's a fairly good consensus that in general, as a society, we probably kept kids out of school longer than we should have. Duh! In 2022, American students fell 13 points on average in math compared to their program for International Student Assessment results for 2018. Poorer school districts suffered more heavily from remote learning loss at 0.6, 4 years behind, likely due to the fact that in those areas, the kids were kept remote longer. And we had talked about this and we knew it. Another thing I wanted to bring up, interesting study here. This was in, I promised to bring this up on today's show. A Gallup survey released this week contains both good and bad news. First, the good news: if you're over the age of 60, you probably are one of the happiest people on earth. That's according to Pollster's World Happiness Report. By the way, what makes people happy? That's, when we've seen the studies before, it's, well, in these socialist states where everybody has pure security, well, that's not what makes me happy. Security doesn't make me happy. Accomplishments and freedom does. So it all depends on, how you judge what makes you happy. According to the Pollster's World Happiness Report, which evaluated relative self-reported levels of happiness in 140 countries worldwide, the U.S. ranks in the top 10 among senior citizens. And yet the younger generations cannot say the same. Among Americans aged 30 or younger, happiness has proven elusive based on the response from its youngest. The United States ranks 62 in global happiness. What explains the disparity? Younger Americans inclined towards political activism are quick to cite material considerations. What makes them happy is stuff. With higher interest rates and lower inventory, the prospects for younger potential home buyers are bleak. Healthcare, food, and utilities are pricey too, making saving for the future a prohibitive prospect. These factors matter, but if you're of a certain age, you also recall that America's youngest working-age citizens have long complained about the same factors contributing to their failure to rise, and yet self-reported happiness among the youngest generation did not fall off a cliff until recently enough that it coincides with what psychologist Jean Twenge identifies as the main culprit, the rise of digital media and the degree to which it has become inescapable with the advent of the smartphone. In the 2019 study, the researcher finds younger people began reporting consistently decreased levels of happiness beginning in 2012, and their satisfaction has declined ever since. This coincides with an increase in young people telling pollsters at the same time they are spending inordinate amounts of time of their day interacting with their smartphones. During that same period, the digital media use increased. Adolescents began spending less time interacting with each other, including getting together with friends, socializing, and going to parties. They reported they got less sleep, spent less time forming durable bonds with their families and communities, attend fewer religious services, and they even use their phones less as phones. Instead, they are texting, posting on social media, playing games, consuming online media products, or listening to music with earbuds, all solitary occupations. Hey, I did have my one earplug for the one ear in my transistor radio. That's interesting. That's really, really interesting.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And he is Eric Harley. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has a morning off, but he returns for Sunday night, Monday morning's show. Good morning. Download our Red Eye Radio app today. You can listen when and where you choose in case you can't listen live overnight, as we normally instruct you to do. By the way, earlier this week, when I was talking about when Trump can actually file, the whole I know that he can file once he's damaged. I don't know, what the official designation for damage would be. We did mention this week, and this is filing an Eighth Amendment claim with the federal courts. We did mention this week, and it was Andrew Chikarsky, I think his name is, a former attorney general, federal AG. We had read the Fox News article where he said this week, quote, "If James actually does try to foreclose on some of his properties, I think he still has paths to move forward through federal court, ultimately to the Supreme Court to complain about Eighth Amendment violations." And we said earlier this week, he didn't say it specifically, that's when he's damaged, but that appears to be what this former attorney general told Fox News the other day. So we did have that earlier this week, but it wasn't definitive enough. I want to see, well, he can file then because you're damaged once the foreclosure starts. That's when you're damaged. That's all. That's what we're looking for. We know he has an Eighth Amendment claim and can file it. It's just what is the exact moment that he is allowed to do that, and that seems to be what that AG is saying on it. We were just amazed that nobody was ever talking about the Eighth Amendment until really, I don't know, this week. So we're glad that finally came out. And if that's the case, then that would be the reason it's delayed, that they don't want to move until she actually does something legally, and that's when the damage begins. All right, our audio cut of the week comes from Tony Bobulinski and his opening remarks at the impeachment inquiry hearing the other day. Tony Bobulinski, in case you don't know it, is a former business partner of Hunter Biden. And remember, he came forward in October of 2020 and said, "No, this is about Joe Biden. Joe Biden's the big guy." But here is part of his opening remarks 2 days ago.
Should I allow Hunter to give his opening statement first?
Doesn't appear Mr. Biden showed up for his public hearing, so we'll recognize you, Mr. Bobulinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, ranking members, and members of Congress, good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you and present my truthful testimony to the American people. I sit here today under oath for one reason and one reason only. The American people deserve to hear the truth. Though the truth involving the deep corruption of the Biden family, including the malfeasance of the sitting president of the United States, might be raw and unpleasant, the American people must hear it. You're presented here today with two narratives in this investigation. A false one being pushed by Joe Biden, a serial liar and fabulous, now under this impeachment investigation for public corruption. His brother, Jim Biden, a 75-year-old man who can't keep his lies straight, including under oath. And his son, Hunter Biden, a chronic drug addict facing 2 indictments with 12 counts. You also have before you the truth, confirmed by multiple Biden family business partners over many years and backed up by mountains of irrefutable evidence, including text messages, emails, documents, recordings. I am the only Biden family business partner with an impeccable military record. I'm grateful that this country has given me the freedom to be successful. I worked hard to become independently wealthy. I've taken several businesses public, sold multiple businesses to some of the world's best private equity firms. In fact, my business success is why they sought me out. However, what they have done is repugnant to me. I am here today because I'm a patriot and I'm a truth teller. We keep hearing from certain corners that our democracy is at risk and democracy is on the ballot in 24. Yet the same people preaching this mantra know better. They continue to lie directly to the American people without hesitation and remorse. Rep. Dan Goldman and Jamie Raskin, both lawyers, and Mr. Goldman, a former prosecutor with the SDNY from New York, will continue to lie today in this hearing and then go straight to the media to tell more lies. Hunter Biden's defense attorney, Abbe Lowell, weaponizes letters to Congress to try to smear my name
Mr. Chairman.
Misstate the cold hard facts
Mr. Chairman.
in an attempt to save his powerfully connected client and his father. I challenge Mr. Lowell to make those claims on national television so he can be held accountable for his lies. Prior to my successful business career, I was an officer in the United States Navy. At Navy's Elite Naval Nuclear Power Training Command, I later served as the command's chief technology officer.
And this is where...
Proceed. I apologize for the disruption from the...
Yeah.
Okay. Am I supposed to say it's my time, Mr. Raskin?
Yeah. But please, Mr. Bobulinski, please
Okay.
come to order. Mr. Bobulinski, please proceed.
Okay.
Please proceed. I apologize for the disruption from the minority.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Chairman, it saved his time, but he called members of this committee liars, and I just want to know whether the order and decorum requirements of House Rule 11 apply to witnesses appearing before the committee. Does it apply or does it not?
It does not. It does not.
Should I address? I don't.
It does not apply.
There's decorum from the members. We've asked for that. There's no language that I'm aware of pertaining to a witness.
Thank you.
So don't make sure we didn't waste any of his time on the opening statement. Mr. Bobulinski, I'm sorry for the disruption. Please continue your opening.
Now, the only thing I would have changed if I was Bobulinski, as I would have repeated that point again. As I was saying, in case anybody didn't hear it, Mr. Raskin and Mr. Goldman are liars. Now back to my text. I would have added that a second time.
Statement.
I think you, Mr. Raskin, used.
We'll make sure it's right. We'll make sure.
Okay, great. I just want to restate, make sure the American people hear all these facts. Abbe Lowell weaponizes letters to Congress to try to smear my name and misstate the cold hard facts in an attempt to save his powerfully connected client and his father. I challenge Mr. Lowell to make those claims on national television so he can be held accountable for his lies. Prior to my successful business career, I was an officer for over 6 years in the United States Navy's Elite Naval Nuclear Power Training Command as a decorated master training specialist. I later served as the commander's chief technology officer, where I held a Hughes security clearance from the Department of Energy and the NSA. When I left Nuclear Power Training Command, I was the #1 ranked direct input officer in the entire command. And then I jumped into the business world and public markets. While I have made a few contributions over the years to Democrats, such as Representative Ro Khanna, I don't see him, but I hope he shows up today. He sits on the Democratic side of the Oversight Committee. I'm not a political person. I come from a family with a long history of distinguished service in our nation's military, including my father, both of my grandfathers, and my brother, all of whom were willing to sacrifice their lives for this great country. My sister serves our military vets for 2 decades at the Veterans Administration. We've lived our life as a family in service to this great country. I hope the American people will pay close attention to this hearing. I also hope they will understand that some members of this committee will engage in absurd attacks and efforts to try to deflect attention from the facts. And I will present today by questioning my integrity and my patriotic duty. You may see me speak passionately at this hearing, but for good reason. Not only was I willing to die for this country, every single male member of my immediate family was willing to die for this country. I want to be crystal clear. From my direct personal experience and what I've subsequently come to learn, it is clear to me that Joe Biden was the brand being sold by the Biden family. His family's foreign influence peddling operation from China to Ukraine and elsewhere sold out to foreign actors who are seeking to gain influence and access to Joe Biden and the United States government. Joe Biden was more than a participant in and a beneficiary of his family's business. He was an active, aware enabler who met with business associates such as myself to further the business, despite being buffered by a complex scheme to maintain plausible deniability. I ask this big question. If there's no evidence of corruption here today, if Joe's conduct and the conduct of his family were fully legal and proper, then why are they so dishonest about it? Not just slight misrepresentations of fact, but deep untruths about the entire corrupt enterprise. Hunter Biden gave his transcribed interview on February 28th and lied throughout his testimony. Here's just one egregious example of Hunter's perjury. He lied to the committee on important details concerning his money demands and threats to CFC in text messages on July 30th and 31st, 2017. He leveraged his father's presence next to him in that infamous text to strong-arm CFC to paying Hunter immediately. Jim Biden also lied extensively throughout his transcribed interview on February 21st and perjured himself. An example of that, on page 100 of his transcript, Jim is asked specifically, do you recall having a meeting with Hunter Biden, Tony Bobulinski, and Joe Biden? Jim's response, absolutely not. The committee was so shocked by his perjury that they asked him the same question multiple times. Each time he denied meeting with me and Joe Biden. After the committee showed him text messages confirming that I met with Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, and Jim Biden at the Beverly Hilton in May 2017, Jim Biden, with a former U.S. attorney lawyer sitting next to him, still denied that meeting took place. Hunter Biden, in his own transcribed interview, confirmed that that meeting took place. Hunter confirmed his uncle perjured himself in front of this committee. I'm simply here to tell the truth to the American people, and I hope each and every one of you, congressmen and women, give me the opportunity to do that instead of focusing on Russia or smearing my family's name or focusing on facts that are irrelevant today.
There you go, Tony Bobulinski. And then, as we had played earlier, the actual audio cut, Jessica Tarlov from The Five, the liberal on The Five, had said after that hearing that Bobulinski, took money from a Trump PAC to pay his legal bills. They had that letter written so quick. His lawyers did, saying that this is defamation without question. He wrote it to basically the legal department of Fox News and say, if there's not a retraction on that, tomorrow we'll be watching. We will file a defamation lawsuit against her and against Fox News. And she came out and she retracted that statement yesterday. Very impressive witness. And like I've said, not only impressive witness, I've never seen a witness so aggressive in going after anyone who defames him or tells an untruth. The other thing is, I just put it into Google and couldn't find it anywhere. I didn't see any response from Hunter Biden or the lawyers yesterday. I couldn't find it anywhere on Google. Nowhere. And I didn't see it. Didn't make a story. I haven't researched this one. This just popped into my head. I didn't see did the White House respond at all to any of it? Because if they did, I didn't see it. So that definitely our audio cut of the week. 866-90-RED-EYE.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Hey, Eric will return for Sunday night, Monday morning show, and there's a few things we'll be able to talk about. Also, catch up on the 2 days that he's been away this week. Actually, this is the best own that I thought happened at the impeachment inquiry with Bobulinski. Excuse me. It's getting near the end of the show. Did I slur my words there? I have... Alan's like, there is no alcohol in the studio. I went outside and drank it. It's on the sidewalk. This is the best own, I thought, yesterday from the hearing. Bobulinski here against, Moskowitz. Yeah. Who the representative who wore the Putin mask. He wanted to show that he was pro-Putin. This was just beautiful. Here we go.
No. You personally, do you believe he should be impeached?
I do.
Okay, and you believe that because you believe Chairman Comer has proven that he committed a high crime and misdemeanor?
No, because I know that he committed high crimes and misdemeanors.
Okay.
I was involved and saw them happen.
Right.
That was great. that was just a great moment. We'll see where it all goes here, and I've always believed, Eric does too, that the plan is not to have an impeachment vote and the Senate look at it. And the Senate have a trial. I think they just want it to go drip, 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 and be part of the mountain of reasons that people will say, sorry, I can't vote for Joe Biden. But we will see. I might be wrong. It's one of the reasons I don't make a lot of predictions. Have yourself a great weekend.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.